Shaking folks, how you doing with all your paintings and your storyboards? Hope everything's going really well. What I've decided to do here is do a grass tutorial, kind of out of the middle of nowhere, much like the rock tutorial. I like kind of handling these things in pieces because I treat them in different ways. It's texturing more than it is, painting, and but it's stuff that you layer into your paintings, which I think can really help you out. If you're finding your stuff looks too ambiguous, you're not happy with it, sometimes these things can really pull your painting together in a very fast way. Once you set it up, then there's ways that you can adjust it and reuse some of these textures to your best abilities. I don't think you should rely on textures. You should have the framework of your shapes down and the flow, everything dictated. Most paintings that you would see in, let's say, Ghibli kind of stuff is not really texture. That's just actually fantastic painting, traditional painting. But you may find a lot of this in the gaming world. Obviously, there's tons of texturing there, and even in cinematics, and especially when it comes to the concept art world of taking some elements a lot further. Yeah, people use texturing. They use it a ton, and especially when it comes to matte painting and things like that. So that's what we're kind of getting into here. Is these are kind of like the final steps of painting your concept art. So that being said, let's dive right in. All right, so this is the grass texturing tutorial here, and what I've done. I'm not going to show you exactly how I paint all this stuff because that will be super painstaking to go through. I'm going to show you the technique of how I got through this texture that I tend to reuse sometimes in elements. It really works quite well, actually. Texturing is a bit difficult because sometimes it ends up looking like you're doing something repetitively too much, and you can see the pattern. And so I'm kind of going to show you how you do that without overly repeating things too much and just being aware of all that. So here's generally the grass texture that I have. I'll show you how I got started on it, and there's a philosophy to this that and that you always paint back to front. And so I like to think of texturing the same way, and just how nature is ground up, right? So you like to think of all the things that are beneath the surface and start building from there. And sometimes it starts out really basic. So where I actually started with this is just with a basic ground layer. That's all it is, just the ground. And as we build over top of it, so I built a really flat texture. Actually, this would, so you can see this a little bit better. So what you have is this texture where I just ended up taking various greens on different opacities, and I did one pass of them in one certain shape around here. So I would fetch some bits here and here and here and here, copy and paste, stamp some of it, and rotate it, put it somewhere else, erase bits of it, and so now you see that some of these things are the same. It's right here. And again over here, it's all over the place, but you're not going to really notice this because this is lying underneath the grass. This is sort of the mulch. In fact, even beneath that, I have my grass. So all my grass layers are gone. You can see how I placed down that mulch. And what I had, can't really see it that well. I just had this really grainy little texture that I built. Really just 4 inches by 4 inches here and there. I just do these little bits of earth, because the earth isn't just completely brown. It's got different elements to it. A lot of different small stones and things that have been broken down over time, fertilizer and all sorts of things like that. It's really diverse. And so I ended up building a layer to do that. And what I would end up doing is I'd build that flat, so I'm looking straight down at it, and then I would tilt it back in perspective. Take another layer of that, punch up the color a little bit, shift it over, flip it, whatever you got to do. So now you can see how rich that earth just looks naturally. That same exact layer, took it, put it on a multiply, or I just darkened it. So in this case was a darkened and multiplied it. Set it on opacity, shifted it around, so now you can see how textured the ground actually feels. And this is the thing, is this looks good enough for me. Doesn't need to look super real, because we're gonna place more things on top of it. And then so I ended up taking that same exact shape and putting an overlay on it and multiplying it over top of this, so I can get the color that I want. And now, so this is where that mulch comes in. So you can see, I shouldn't have had a hard edge there, but it's because there was other stuff painted on this background. In front of it, it was all right. So I ended up taking what I had there as a huge texture, and I ended up putting it down in perspective. So I use my perspective tool in this case, as you'll see. With this huge shape, and then I go to perspective, and then I just pinch the corners in, and it would lay down in that level, so it looks like it's going off in the distance. And this extra layer on top was just a darker version of the same thing, multiplied on top to give it some three-dimensionality. So it just pops a little bit. It's not embossing it. It's just moving things around a little bit, so it looks like there's shadows on top of these things. If we actually go back to the original texture here, I'd laid some other opacities down, fade them out, and the reason being is that you don't want any hard edges. You want things to have movement and flow, and that's really just a lot of copying and pasting, folks. It's not that hard. Once you get something that you kind of like that shows some depth, then you can layer it and layer it and layer it, and next thing you know, you have this kind of nice underbelly texture. So now it's time to start building some of the grass. So you can see that these things it's not the best organized, but yeah, these were some of the other textures that I had. So I keep them separate in the file, so I can reuse them without having the effects all done on them. And it's really easy to be able to reuse all my textures that way. Cool. So now I built this one layer of grass, and you may notice some of it is stamped and copied and things like that. So I do sections, different greens, and I did them in layers, so you can see that something is lying in front of the other. Made sure to use 3 different tones of greens. So you'd see there's a light, there's a mid, and then there's a darker one. And that's just with a straight brush, and I'd lay it out and copy and paste what I need to copy and paste out of it. But so now you have a nice row of this that works. So when it came to doing these textures now, you'll see how it starts to affect. So I have my layer. These are the layers furthest back. That's that exact same painting of the grass, and I just have it furthest back. This is the same one. I have it shifted, probably flipped even, and it's a little bit larger. Same thing with this, and so now what I would end up doing, you can see that some things are repeating a bit much, but I would stamp certain areas, like take a stamp of this, let's say, change up a couple spots. Now it's not so empty. See, it doesn't look like too many things are completely repeated. And yeah, so then I just do some highlight layers on top with a lighter color of green or yellow. Just punch up a couple areas, and now you can start to see that this doesn't look like I've textured it all the same way, because you're highlighting other areas and other areas fall to the background. It's hard for the eye to capture all that stuff unless you stare at this drawing for a really long time. More highlights here and there. And even just lay down a couple of dead pieces of grass here and there just to give it some depth. It doesn't take that long to really set this stuff down. So I had some snow in there somewhere. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this into a painting, except I'm not going to use that grass. I am going to use this so I can show you I went about all that. So let's try that out. Let's call this, I don't know. Okay. You just see as I kind of have half a painting done here, my clouds and sky are already done, and there's this really flat looking layout that I have for my background. So this is going to get a little challenging. First step is, now that I've noted all these colors, what I want to do is take this, let's start with the foreground. Cool. Let's take a look at some of these other textures, which is which. Should have labeled. That's grass. Nice. Can't see what that is. That's just some sand that I made. So definitely going to use that sand texture. Grain. Light grain. More light grain. That's rocks. This is the mulch. All right, I'll keep this kind of in the order of how you would see it. So, good. Let's put these to some settings. so that it all kind of stays in the realm of what I want to be using these things for. So I'm going to show you how a couple of these things work. Move these textures right up in. We're going to create a clipping mask parented to the one shape. You can see how that all works. Let's move some of it around. Start it a bit. Alright, so you can see that the grains are kind of all facing that middle ground area. Now we're going to do the same thing with the mulch. Pretty quick and easy. Mask. There you go. Now I know I did it the opposite way before. What I'm going to do here, shift some of this. Let's see how this looks. There we go. Now you got some, starting to build some dimension to this thing. And now is the last kind of interesting step. Build some grass on top of this. Since we've got some grass, let's just use what we got. We'll worry a little bit more about some highlights later, but I do want to just create some definition in here. Some separation. it's fun. Sort of, you get to see this thing really come into shape here quite quickly. And this is only just the foreground there. And we're going to start color matching some of this shortly with your sky a little bit. So, I mean, generally what you would end up doing is you would have a painting partway done already. If you're not really satisfied with it, or you want to really push it to a level of realism, this is kind of one way of handling that, in my perspective. Let's take a look at how this looks together here. Let's call this the foreground. Cool. Pretty. It's not too bad, actually. So now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do the same things basically to this layer here, and I'll try and do this a little bit faster so that we're kind of, cutting some corners, sort of. All right, clip and mask. Show everything, these layers. Now this stuff's just going to be a lot smaller because it's farther back. And for anything that doesn't fit in your texture, you can just copy and paste it and do certain things. Like I'm going to probably do that with a bit of the mulch, let's say. So the mulch, let's say I want to make this actually quite a bit smaller. That works. Now let's add the grass. I'm going to start the grass from the foreground, actually, this time. So we can see how its scale shifts. It's not even quite as small as that last bit of the foreground one, so we're going to really have to make this quite a bit smaller. That's good enough, I think. Now what we can do, honestly, actually, is just see what colors we were using here. Try to adjust this to the same type of color. Then I'm going to choose the midground. So in this case, looks like I need a bit of cyan. So sometimes what I like to do in this case is I'll just do a quick pass of trying to find what color mixes work with that. Usually I might actually paint it or put an overlay on it. In this case, I'm going to try and see what I can play with to get it close enough to that color. Might be close. It's a little dark, but we'll see. It's a little blue for my liking. And we'll lighten it up with, there'll be a little bit of mist in there too, so we'll see. I made a decision. I'm gonna reuse this same texture. I'm gonna shrink it a bit as I squish them all together into one layer. Now I make this one a bit smaller, so it does recede a little bit into the background. See how this feels. Not too bad. Now I can add some little bits of shape to it. So as you can see in my entire underbelly here, I just had these little carved out shapes, and that's kind of what I'm going to follow here. Really lightly. You can see how it starts to create just a little bit of depth. Whatever you want to do. Even though I kind of have this grass standing pretty straight up, there's ways that you can, just through these shadows, you can add a little bit of motion to them. It doesn't seem so entirely flat. I'm just going to add some highlights. These things really pop off, so what you can do with this is show that there's some force of wind, maybe that's kind of kicking through a little bit if you want. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's fun. I mean, this is the itty bitty little things that make the biggest difference. So I really don't like looking at stuff that's textured and then you can tell that it's just repeated elements. I like that textures are used in smart ways, layered, and I mean that's nature again, right? It's like everything's always the same. The little bits and pieces of things, it all comes from somewhere. And it's good to create a difference within similarities. Even you see now there's something's happening here. It's a lot of push through here. And some depth. I may even go over top of this and pick a few things and create some extra movement. Back to our foreground, we can do kind of little bits of the same thing here. Now if you find it's sticking out a bit too much over top of everything, pull that right back down. There we go, that's behind. And you want to, do things like create some pathways that happen here. So you see that we've broken through some of this, give it some dimension, so it's not just these lines that carry across either. I wonder. Now we have something really far back, and one thing I can really do any way that I want to is I can take some of these things that I built here, I don't like doing this, but just for the sake of this particular assignment, I'm gonna show you what that's like. So I'm gonna group this, create a copy mask. Yep, that's everything. There you have it. All right, do what you want to do with it. You saved your textures down here, so they're unaffected. Here's a couple of little extra tricks if you want. Flatten this layer, punch it over a bit. Show its lightness. That's if you want to cast any depth. You can do the same for any of those other layers, but I'm just kind of going to leave this one alone for a bit. Now you can get into some painting. What do you want to put in here? Couple flowers, maybe. And some things that you want to really push in the foreground. I mean, you probably would have drawn this stuff out so you know exactly where you want to put things, but yeah, I'm just showing you the fun of it. So let's get a couple of these colors I always love those little, I mean, they kind of come from weeds and things like that, but it's nice to see these little dashes of color here and there, patches of stuff that's just made its way through. And like everything, one thing you want to do in a lot of your backgrounds is you want to repeat a lot of things so you can see where the scale changes in some parts of this world. And that way it's easier for us to see how we have some repeating elements that recede into the background. They may not need to be as detailed at all, and specifically they just won't be. But you know, some elements that you pick up here and there need to be repeated in color. There you go. All done. You know, this is one of those things where you can play with the colors if you want to take it further. You know, let's say I'm not satisfied with that. One thing you can do, just save what you got. Take another layer of it. Play around with, you know, the settings. See what you think may fit. You know, I like to do this all the time. If I see something isn't fit and I don't really know the answer to it, I kind of like to give it another pass really quickly before repainting. So maybe something like this. Maybe our foreground layer needs some treatment too. So cool, let's give it the same thing. Well, maybe that's what floats your boat a bit better. Something like that. Cool. All right. Well, that's how you paint grass, and to me at least. And maybe next time I'll do more of a larger painting scale here. But I want you all to see how you can really pull a painting together really quickly, just like this. Once you've laid everything out, which is the 99% of the work, and then all of a sudden now you have these things that you can work with that really bring it to life. And it takes like half an hour. So, you know, and I've just shown you exactly how you can do that. So anyways, good luck with your paintings. We'll see you soon. Right on. So that's it. As you can see, we kind of pulled something together really quickly here. Quickly being half an hour. But, you know, I already had my textures all set up and everything and good to go, and obviously the sky, so these paintings are going to take you a bit longer. But again, if you're just sitting in a place where you feel stuck and then your painting's not really showing a lot of depth, this is a technique that you can use, kind of essentially matte painting, in that you can show kind of some realism to your paintings if that's what you choose to do. The same techniques really go for when I was showing everybody the rock textures that I built and gravel textures and things like that. And you just lay it down and you have room to play with it. It's not there to be set in stone like you just got over this big hump. You got to use these things wisely and give it some depth and flow and build on top of it. And you're still going to be painting, still going to be drawing, but this is this is a nice tool to use when painting your paintings, and I think it's really worthwhile to investigate and try out, for some of your work. But at any rate, good luck with your paintings, and I'll see you later. Take care.